It is Thursday evening, the 16th of May, 2024. It's time for another edition of the program Uplate with Sion Marshall. You're here, I'm here, we're ready. And the program begins right now. If I told you that this evening I'm super excited about our program, you might think I'm joking, but don't worry. As the program unfolds, as we get into the program, you would understand what I mean and you would see firsthand the excitement that I'm having with this program. This evening's edition is very special for a number of reasons. But the first reason is that one of my longest friends, that I've known for most of my life, because I'm a bit older than him now, so I can't say all my life because I was born before him, is on the program. And I'm really, really excited and happy to have him. But most importantly, this program is going to give information to a number of young people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who have a keen interest in enlisting in the British forces. Now, years ago, that movement started where Vincentians would enlist in the various parts of the British Armed Forces. I know back then, many of my friends, schoolmates and so forth, left St. Vincent and the Grenadines and came to the UK to make a better life for themselves. And over the years, many males and females have followed suit. This evening, I have two very knowledgeable, informed guests who are going to speak to you about what it was back then, what it is like now, and give you some guidance so that if you are interested, you would avoid some of the pitfalls that some people find themselves in, and you would be able to make the most of your opportunities available through this medium. This evening, I'm going to welcome my two guests, and I'm going to bring them into the room, and then I'm going to let them introduce yourself, and eventually you'd know which one of them is my longest friend. So let me bring in both of them. Right, we have the brother Rufus, and I'm going to have them give their full name, title, and also their rank, because these are no junior pia people. When these gentlemen speak, there is a level of authority that comes with the information that they're giving, because they've been there for a while, they've gone through the ranks, and they know what they're talking about. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity, and massive good afternoon to the wider audience also.
All right. Rufus, introduce yourself, give us your full name, surname, tell us where in St. Vincent you're from, and also give us your rank, because that's important.
Good. So I'm Rufus Collins. Grew up in the Windward side, predominantly in Diamonds Village, related to my father's a McDowell, my mother is a Collins. So anybody's Collins and McDowells from those regions are naturally aligned to my relations. Currently, military-wise, I'm Captain Collins, and my current role within the Army is I could use the word engagement for the common understanding. It's recruitment, but for contract reasons, we're not allowed to use the word recruitment, but engagement. So my current role is the OCR, the officer in charge of engagement for the Royal Logistic Corps across the UK.
All right, Captain Collins. Captain Collins, I know you've not been to the UK long enough, but in our day, when you talk about a Collins, you're talking about a sharp implement, a Collins. Erasto, good evening, buddy, and please introduce yourself.
So good afternoon to the wider audience. Erasto Patterson, born in Chateaubelair, and grew up with Cian. As he's mentioned, he is the friend that I've had the longest. And I've had to pause because he had visited my unit on Tuesday. And when I introduced him as my longest serving friend, and he's had to remind me that he's not served. So my earliest childhood friend, Cian Marshall. People who know me would know that I've left Chateaubriand when I was 13 years old to go to Mountain View Adventist Academy. And it was from Mesopotamia that I actually left and joined the army. So currently, in terms of rank, I am an acting major within the Army Air Corps, OC4 671 Squadron, so the headquarters squadron for 2 Army Air Corps.
So we have 2 OCs. We have now 2 OC, as I've been around Rasta for a while, and excuse me for calling him Rasta because that's what I know. 2 OC is also an abbreviation, eh? So we have 2 OCs, but 2 OC is also an abbreviation, right, Rasta? Right, Rufus? So you get OC, although we have 2 OCs here, right?
Yeah.
I'm learning. Gentlemen, it's really such a pleasure to have you guys and a part of this program. And the information that would be given out today, I know many individuals will be thirsty for it, and they've been longing for this type of credible information that we endeavor to give this evening. Now, any of you, now, by the way, for the audience, so you all know who my buddy, Rasto. I mean, we go way back, way back. So he knows my secrets, I know his. And let me say also that when I talked about the pleasure and the excitement, I am tremendously proud of Erasto as someone who I've grown up with. And this evening, the fact that Fudger Boy and Baby Boy Dipan program, you know, is something that is emotional for me. But I'll try not to get into that part. Let me talk about Army and so on. Now, you guys left years ago. I know Rasta left in the early 2000s. I suspect Rufus, you might have left around the same time. What prompted you guys to enlist, first of all, in the British forces?
Rufus, I'll go first on that one. So 2001, I used to work for Bigger Bigs. And a guy called Brian said to me that the army is coming to recruit. Or it might have been actually 2000, around that time. And I was like, well, I've never heard anything. But he said he wanted to go. And what he said was, I said, well, I'm not really interested. He then asked me to do some training. He said, you just do some training with me, you know, to get me motivated. And once I get through the process, you don't have to go through with it. But I started to train. The funny thing is, I don't think we ever trained together. When I applied, so when the army came and I applied, I didn't get a response back. So I said to Brian, that is a sign that I'm not supposed to do this. He then took me down to the recruiting office in town, got me my paperwork in my hand. I then applied, and then I got a response back that, yeah, I was successful as an applicant. Now, the funny thing is, after going through the entire process, I remember having my final medical, and the doctor said to me, so do you think you're going to sign on? And I thought, well, if Brian is signing on, then I might as well sign on because it means that I know somebody. Unfortunately, Brian didn't make it because he had an issue with his knee. So I went to support Brian many years ago, 2000, and ended up being the one who actually joined the army. Then I really didn't know anything about the army. I got offered infantry or RLC. When I asked what the infanteers did, and they told me, I said, nah, just give me RLC. So I've spent the last 22 years or so in the RLC. Rufus, over to you.
Well, I mean, a slightly different boat, but the time frame between both of us joining is, I think, about a 6 months gap. So I'm 6 months behind. So technically, Erasto is my senior. Put it that way. Initially, before I left St. Vincent, I was a school teacher. I taught in Emmanuel High School, Mespo, for almost 10 years, and actually migrated on the chances trying to have further education in Canada. And at the time, things didn't work out well, but I was told that they were recruiting teachers in England. So I came across here to teach. It wasn't for me. It's a whole different culture in terms of how we approach schooling and education back home in comparison to how the British systems work. And even when you think that you're well up to scratch, then you get it's a whole different kettle. So the other option was either to go back to Canada or go back to St. Vincent. And being frustrated, I went for a walk one day and came across the recruiting office. And I remember that there was some Vincentians who had actually joined. A friend of mine actually joined. So I called him and asked some questions about it. And he said, yeah, you might just walk into the office. So I walked into the office to ask a question. The guy handed me a flyer and say I go have some read on it. But I walked with the door and thought, you know what? What's there to think about? I walk in and say, you know what, I'll do it. And he said, really? I said, yeah. So from there, my option was to join the REME, the Royal Mechanical Engineers. That's what I really wanted to do. But I was persuaded to go towards the Royal Logistic Corps. And honestly, I haven't regretted it. From inception, so from me walking into that recruiting office in Charing Cross in central London to me entering phase 1 training was literally 3 weeks. The 3 weeks of me walking into that office and say, I want to join this service. I was actually in Purbright, ready to start training. The process was pretty swift back in those days. The British Army had a massive open policy trying to recruit Commonwealth because there was a massive shortage of British persons who were showing interest in becoming armed service personnel. And so the chances were wide and pretty much easy. I was pretty much a fit person because before I left St. Vincent, I was into weightlifting and I used to love running. So I have a habit of running in the dark. I used to go running every morning back in St. Vincent. And every evening I used to go to the gym in Sion Hill and things. So I was pretty fit. So fitness wasn't a challenge for me at all to start the process or to enter the service. And that was me from then into training and through the process to where I am now.
Now, both of you had different reasons for joining, but ultimately, both of you ended up as part of the Corps now, or rather the service. Now, by the way, if I may, Rufus, so that means Curtis Graves then.
Yes, Curtis started teaching just after me, so we taught together for a period of time. Yeah.
All right, Curtis and I were our schoolmates and classmates actually, so that's my good buddy as well. So I'll let Curtis know I met Rufus Collins.
Oh, that's good.
Now, what were some of the challenges? Now, I know that coming to the UK, Erasto, for example, in the same way I would have had the challenges coming into the UK at that time from rural St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There might have been some challenges, and I'm sure definitely that both of you had different challenges. Some might have been similar, but different challenges. What were some of the challenges you encountered coming to the UK that moment to begin your training?
So for me, it was the culture. The culture was the biggest part. But then again, we came over in February. And for people who've never traveled into the cold, I think one of the fastest mile and a half I ever ran was my first mile and a half in the UK. February, absolutely freezing. So there was that learning to deal with the cold. And there was certainly the culture. And I think this is one of the biggest pieces where us as Caribbean people and perhaps African people kind of fail in terms of our integration. So one of the things that used to like catch me off guard is when people say, I'll see you later. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to see me later? And I'll see you later was just a term to say, well, I'll see you next time. But there's a lot of the cultures that we didn't understand. For example, if you're from up Scotland and you have a deep Scottish accent as a Caribbean person, you struggle to understand that. So when you've been told to do something and you don't understand, that sort of creates a little bit of a barrier. But also for the Caribbean person who speaks really, really deep patois, that creates a problem as well because they don't understand you. So communication was always a big piece. But yeah, so for me, the 3 big things at the minute was adapting to the cold, understanding the culture, and being able to communicate in a sense that you understand what they're saying and they understand what you're saying.
Rufus?
I'll endorse everything that Erasto just mentioned there, but one of my biggest challenge was actually perception and expectation. My perception of a military person or a service person was what I saw on television. So the Dolph Lundgren, Rambo, and Schwarzenegger, the guy who walks into the field with a big gun and just blaze everything, and he didn't need help. He just take everything on his own, and that was my perception of a military life. So I thought that me walking into the army anytime, a bit like a rock is going to be an easy life for me. It's going to be, so my expectations were like, this is going to be easy because I'm built like Sylvester Stallone. I got the body to do this. I'm fit, I could do this. Not understanding that that's not military life. So I remember when I saw one of my instructor, I don't think it's advisable to call his name, but he was like 6'3", and his belly was hanging all. I think this guy can't be in the army. How is he wearing the uniform? Because that wasn't my perception. I didn't know what army life was. And I think a lot of people, even now, don't understand that. And it goes back to my first visit to see my sister in New York. The first thing her husband asked me is, how many people you kill? Because that's the perception that they had, that being in the army, it was all about the guy with the gun who blazing trail all the time. And that was one of my first awakening, that I'm not going to be a Rambo, and I'm not going to be a Dolph Lundgren walking into the battlefield and taking on the enemy all by myself. Along with all the other things that I should have mentioned there.
Okay. Now, back then, the army came to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I remember recruiters would come and they would have their sessions there and so forth. And before you left St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you essentially had your acceptance already, Rasto? Would that be correct in describing it?
So by the time you left St. Vincent, you were pretty much almost in the army. So what we did was, when we came across, we did a fitness test, a medical test, and swore allegiance, and then started basic training, which is a lot different from the way we do things now.
Now, one of the things that I know about the army, as I said, I had many friends apart from you, Rasto. I mean, and I wouldn't call some of them names, but many of them. One of my friends, as you know, Rasto, one of my schoolmates, I know, made the news for all the wrong reasons, and I believe is currently incarcerated. And there are many others. But there were some enticements that were offered to Vincentian nationals or Commonwealth nationals as encouragement, inducements to join the army. Were those enticements realistic, and are they still available today for persons joining up? Are they still used as enticements today for individuals joining up? And I use the word enticements loosely. If you think there's a more appropriate word for it, then please, you can feel free to use that word.
Rufus, you could have this.
I think it would be appropriate to just brief what the enticement, what you mean as an enticement, or what it was the attraction piece.
Right. I know people were told that they'll be the army would pay for them to study, to follow their studies and those type of things. And so individuals who wanted to pursue higher education but didn't have the means start, okay, I go in the army, I spend a few years and I'll be able to pursue my bachelor's and so on and so forth. Those type of opportunities for advancement outside of your regular situation.
So that's a very interesting piece. And yes, they are there, and they are achievable and available. What we have is a thought process that is not always aligned to it. I normally speak to a lot of what I wouldn't say Vincentians, Caribbean people in a whole, and I always remind them that 99% of us, before we leave St. Vincent or leave the Caribbean, always have a dream to get further education. 99% of us, but we didn't because of either shortcomings such as finances, or because there was no immediate available education system to go straight on to it. And the Army does offer that opportunity, but when people arrive here, they shift. The thought of foreign education shift, and it look more aligning themselves to, I want to put a pleasurable time, if you put it that way. But the Army does offer these things. Like I myself are currently doing my dissertation for a master's. And I know Erasto is currently doing his master's. But that's all paid for 100% by the Army. Throughout my years, I've been doing so many different educational courses. Well, you might just call them a certificate back in St. Vincent, but they call them levels like level 1, well, like to level 5s. I just jump straight to level 5s, which is equivalent to a work-based BSc. Yeah, so there are lots of educational opportunities there that the Army actually offer. I even was sharing today that the Army offers 5 PhD per year if you apply for it. In the last 2 or 3 years, only 2 people applied for a PhD from the service. Addition to that, the Army offers 180 spaces for service personnel children or interested school leavers to go on and actually study a university degree. And all they have to do, they don't have to be in the Army. This could be a direct school leaver. Do a degree, and when you finish that degree course, after fully paid for, $25,000 a year, and if you study medicine, £75,000 a year to study that. All you have to is offer the Army back 3.5 years service as an officer, not even as a soldier. To me, that's like a free giveaway, because what you're actually getting is your education paid for, that you don't have to worry about paying back any loans when you finish your university degree. Plus, you guarantee a job. You guarantee 3 years job, which will give you 3 years experience. So if you don't want to carry on serving, you go off to civilian industries organizations, and you have 3 years to boast of experience on top of having the qualification. Last year, I don't want to ask you to guess how many people applied for the 180 spaces, because you'll be surprised. So yes, the Army does offer lots and lots of opportunities for education. I currently have a list of 1,600 educational courses that you could do in the Army for free. And I normally share them with people from time to time.
Lots of opportunities. Rasto?
Yeah. So
well, I know you always going to university, and you're always, working on something there. So I know that.
So what I want to talk about in terms of opportunities and incentives is the reason why we join. So when I joined the Army, apart from the fact that my friend said that we should train together, it was the chance of a better employment, the opportunity to travel, and just improve the way I live. Yeah. So when we have a lot of individuals joining the Army from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we talk about, we focus on pay. So what is the pay like? And there's a misconception, I think, that we get paid loads and loads. You do get paid, but what we need to take into consideration is living in the UK is different from living in St. Vincent. And I know that's probably overstating the obvious, but the things that you would have to worry about in the UK, in most cases, you won't have to worry about that in St. Vincent. If you're, let's say, a parent or family you come across, you live in a house, and one of the advantages of being in the Army is that your housing, the cost of your housing is a lot cheaper than what you pay if you are renting from somebody else. So that is one of the incentives. You could come and live in a 3-4 bedroom house and you pay £350 a month. In terms of salaries, I think when people home look at the Army, the information the Army push out, and they see a private soldier could get paid 24 grand a year. But what that doesn't say is that is the highest level of pay a private soldier gets. So if you have a friend over here and she's a private, and you read, private soldier could make 24 grand a year, you think that they're working for 24 grand, but they're not in a lot of cases. In most cases, they walk in for about 17 grand because they're brand new soldiers, and they'll walk up each year to an increment to get to there. So that's just one of the things that you need to take into consideration. If money is your driving force, just know that you have to start from the bottom and walk your way up. And one of the way you could actually increase your salary is by getting promoted, and that takes time and understanding. So there's that piece.
Erasto, sorry, let me just, but I think I might have to correct a little piece of that, because that's something I do, part of the engagement piece. So I think that salary thing has changed. It's changed. The new DIN release last year and then updated this year also. So the starting pay in training, and I think quickly revert back to our days, Sean, when we joined the army, we were paid 20 quid every fortnight, in phase one, 20 pounds a fortnight. You laugh.
Yes, but hold on. So the reason why we used to get paid that is because they used to save the rest of the money for us
for the end of your end of
when you pass.
So for your first 3 months in service, you made 60, 120 quid. Put it that way. For the first 3 months. Yeah. Now these soldiers, what they actually get in training is 18,000. That's started. So they get 18,000 before tax per year. That's what it started. When they finish phase one and enter phase two, they will get 24 grand. Yeah, but just about that. There's just little, well, round it up 24,000 as a phase to train, phase to soldier. Yeah, and that's based on your trade. I'm working off the lowest trade tier. Some people will start off as much as 27,000 based on the trade choices. However, the trade choices that offer you that 27 grand and above is not open to foreign and commonwealth. Yeah, because of security reasons. But so the average commonwealth after phase two training now will start up at 24 grand. A lot more than what we had back in this patrol. That's what I got as a corporal.
The 20 quid we used to march in for, and if you get your regimental number wrong, you get kicked out and you go to the back of the queue. But it was good drill practice.
So I'm glad you brought something in, Rasto. You talk about what is happening today. Things have changed. How have things changed for aspirants, for individuals who are now willing to enlist in the army? I know, for example, that they no longer go to St. Vincent or go to the islands to recruit. So how is it different? And in your experience, you and Rufus, what are some of the pitfalls that some of these young people who are interested in being part of the armed forces, what are some of the pitfalls that they fall into? What are some of the mistakes they make? Let us help to prepare them. This is what I want us to do this evening, by first of all outlining how it's different, and then we can dive into some of the do's and the don'ts for them.
I think I'll take the first part of the question, Sean, and let Pato take the second part. I think it's more fitting that way, if I put it that way. Yeah. The process now for foreign and commonwealth is all virtual, so the application is online. It doesn't matter which foreign and commonwealth country are from, apart from the Nepalese, the Gurkhas, who are allowed to have they have a recruiting center in Nepal that they could actually go and do it. But every other foreign and commonwealth, the process is virtual. The application is online. You first have to have an email address, set yourself up an email address. Use that email address to access, to join or register on the Army join site. So it's a site that says, I want to join the Army. Yeah. You go onto that site, you use that email address and register on the system. Then it takes you to the application page where you start the application process. The most difficult phase in that application process is the part that says, when did you enter the UK? And let me just reverse back a little there. You must have a passport. You must have a passport, because a lot of people don't realize that with the passport, you can't even make the first step in the application process because it asks for passport number. Then it asks when you enter the UK. A lot of people get stuck there because if you don't put a date in, it doesn't let you pass. But if you say you enter the UK and you put it to say you enter, where the requirement to join the army, which haven't really changed, is 5 years legally living in the UK. If you put a date less than that and you have a foreign passport, the system kick you out right away and say, well, you're not qualified. Yeah. So it's getting past that stage. Once you get past that stage, Then you go on to the end of the application. It will give you one of three answers. One, to say that your application is not successful, and that will come in an email while you're still on the system, maybe because something's with your passport or something like that nature. Two, you might say that the Army is not currently recruiting. And three, you might say an agent will get back to you soon. If you see the latter, then happy. Yeah, you have actually passed through the first stage. The agent will get back to you, which we call a caseworker. And that caseworker will actually guide you through the rest of the process until you enter the UK. If it says that the Army is not currently recruiting, a lot of people get turned off right away and think, oh, I'm not going to get through. And I think that you're going to ask me that question later, so I'm going to leave it for later. Because a lot of people think that there's a period of recruiting, a period when you're not recruiting. If you see that statement, don't just blank your application. Keep checking your email from time to time, because it's a holding process. And from time to time, it's like having a funnel. It may trickle through. And if it trickles through, then you might get an email that says, a caseworker would like to have this information. Right? So if you see that second, don't just say, oh, I didn't get one, and leave it from there. And I know you're going to ask me a question. We'll answer that later when you ask that question. But that's the current process of application for anybody who wants to join. It's all online. That's where it starts.
Right. So the second phase is the invitation to the UK. So what we know, well, what we do is a 3-day assessment. So you tentative up on a Monday, do some assessment. So you'd redo your BARB tests, you do some medicals, you'll do some activities. And on the Wednesday, you'll do your interviews, and then you'll sort of get a date based on your performance. So in terms of pitfalls, applicants need to realize that the Army is built on teamwork. So everything you do, you're a part of a team. It doesn't matter if you're a section in a squadron or you're a part of a division or a formation. You work as a part of a team. And that teamwork needs to be demonstrated right from the start. So if you tip up and you are the one person who wants to sit by yourself and don't engage with anybody else, you get noticed for that. So that's the first thing. Remember, this is a team sport, it's a team activity, it's a team organization. So be a part of the team. That's the first thing. The Army requires mental and physical fitness and resilience. So if you're coming to do an assessment, make sure that you've done some physical training back home. Make sure you run. Make sure you read. Ask yourself, because there's questions. You're naturally going to get asked questions, one of which is, why do you want to join the Army? And if you can't answer that, then you probably shouldn't be there. So that 3-day assessment phase, think about your teamwork, think about your physical fitness, think about the assessments that you have to do your practice home, and make sure that you engage with the people around you. Because if you come into England to be a part of an organization, one of the quickest ways to move forward is to learn about the organization and the part that you could play in it.
Now, now, the fact that the method has changed has not deterred our young people. Some individuals actually leave St. Vincent and the Grenadines before even beginning the application process and come to the UK. Is that advisable? Is that advised?
No. And I deal with that on a daily basis. Even today, I got asked that very question. Some people get ill-advised that if they come here, they could speed up the process. Now, if you enter the UK, you cannot walk into a recruiting office as a foreign Commonwealth and attempt, well, you could attempt, but you're going to get kicked out right away, practically. Yeah. Only people who are living in the UK, or UK residents, that includes citizens, or if you're legally living here for 5 years, is allowed to walk into a recruiting office and join the Army from there. Everybody else must apply online. There's a political side to that, and there's which we wouldn't see, but I know of it, and I don't think I'm allowed to really express the political side of it. But there's a political side to that where there's a control mechanism to understand how many people are actually coming into the system to join the services. And that's controlled by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. If you could just walk in, like what back in my days when I did and done that, they might have lost that count. So to control the amount that they actually put in through the system, all application is online. It's actually assessed through the front and commonwealth office and then trickle down into the services as and when numbers are required. So coming here is not going to make the process any faster or any easier. The same goes to people who have received the invitation. When you get invitation, you also get a date for selection. I'll advise people again, don't come here too early because you have friends and you want to come and spend time with your friends. Because if you get here too early, don't forget you have a 6-month window on that visa when you come through. You have 6 months as a visitor to the country. It's in that 6 months that you're going to do your selection process. If you come here as soon as you get that letter, 5 months in, and your date to start to attend selection is 5 months later, and you fail on your first attempt, they might give you 5 or 6 weeks to do a second attempt. And a lot of people who came in too early then realize that 5 and 6 weeks goes out of their 6 months, and then they have to leave the country, which is going to cost them a whole lot of different money to go home or go to the country and fly back in. So time yourself properly. Give yourself the time in. A nice little window to give you time to acclimatize, but not a massive gap that will eat into your 6 months you're going to get when you land into the country.
What, as someone who is individuals in a leadership role in the Army, you guys, both of you, are officers in charge. I was at Rasto's base recently, and there was a nice photograph, being taken by him and his squadron and so forth. Do you? I want to phrase this properly here because I want to sound like a beating up on my people too much. But do you see attitudinal issues that are negatively affecting the way our people, Vincentians in particular? Just recently, there was big news at home where there was a massive fight in a brawl in a club here involving a bunch of Vincentians who's going to get bust up and so on and so forth. And that's just one aspect. As I said, my schoolmate made the news for the wrong reason and is now incarcerated. Is there a real problem with the attitude of Vincentians that, how we say at home, muddying the waters for other people?
Yeah, so certainly from my perspective, there is. And it's one of the things that Rufus and a couple of us talk about. When we joined the Army, the only Black people we saw were corporals, Black corporals. And for us, everybody wanted to be corporals. These weren't corporals from the Caribbean, they were British-born corporals. But everybody wanted to be corporals because that's what we saw. And I don't think there's anybody who's joined up around my time who's still in. Actually, there might be one person who joined up around our time who is still a corporal, and actually one might be a lance corporal. But on a whole, even as first-generation soldiers, not knowing a whole great deal about the Army, we've made it places. Now, when Vincentian soldiers join, instead of seeing corporals, they see warrant officers class 2, they see warrant officers class 1s, they see captains, they see majors. And I'm talking about people who could come up to them and say, yo, we're part of Vincentians. And you're talking to a real Caribbean person as opposed to a Black British person. So I feel saddened that a lot of the soldiers that we have coming through these days, sometimes I just class them as economic migrants, because what I've realized is, due to the fact that we don't recruit the way that we used to, I think most of the soldiers we tend to get falls under 2 categories. Those who are financially able to make it, and those who are financially able and have somewhere to stay. Because this, housing is one of the biggest issues that we've got. Not everybody comes across here and behaves in a way that, kind of makes us feel bad about what's happening in the news. You've still got the 1 and 2 soldiers who really come across here. And a part of, Rufus and I formed a support network the other day that
I believe we lost Ras today. I believe he froze up a little bit there, Rufus.
Yeah.
So maybe you could
I think
take the lead there, because but and continue, or at least add to that, to the discussion that we were having.
so. What Erasto was alluding to there makes a lot of sense, and I would say add spice into it is from the Caribbean. I think St. Vincent, even though we have the least, apart from lower Les Antilles, the least numbers of persons in service. I think we have the most in more senior ranks than anybody else. There are more people who commission from the rank as into officer than any other island in the Caribbean from St. Vincent. So naturally, there are more role models from St. Vincent for the Vincentian soldiers to actually follow. Yeah, I could name off the top of my head 4 or 5 people who are actually made it into officers. And if we start going to warrant officers and into sergeants, it's even more. But there are more people there for them to follow as an example than when we join, and that's what Erasto was leading to earlier. The good thing is that I didn't realize, and I honestly didn't realize how much being in the British Army meant to young Vincentian. I honestly did. I'd lost that kind of connectivity. I didn't realize it, but something I do on a regular basis. On a regular basis, I get called into issues trying to sort things out with behavior from young Vincentian soldiers, and I'm disappointed sometimes. And sometimes I don't even know how to handle the situation because of the embarrassment. When we joined the army or joined the service back in those days, we were looking for a way out, self-satisfaction, progress, and all that, but we had nobody to lead that way. The younger ones don't have all of that. We have people like this program that we actually doing here now as a guidance piece. We didn't have that. They have people they could call and ask questions. We didn't have that. The people they could actually go to. We didn't have that. 2 issues I recently got involved in with one who's a young man, and his argument at the end of the situation was that he's a grown man and he doesn't like to be told what to do. But you are in the service. That's what the army is about. It's about obeying orders. Another one I got called into from his commanding officer is just to have a chat with him. Is 7 years in the service and he still thinks that he's in St. Vincent. He still park his car by the roadside, put up his boot and thump his songs out, and that's illegal in the UK. You can't do that. And there's so much different things about this soul that he seemed not to be able to adapt. So one of the struggles that we're having is that a lot of the young Vincentians who are coming through are failing to adapt not only to military life, but to British culture and British laws. And that could be a stumbling block. I'm not saying they're all bad. I do come across with the people who ask a lot of important questions and are very interested. They're interested in achieving greatness. And I've seen a lot of the young guys who achieve greatness. I went to a passed parade last month, I think it was, and the top shot was a Vincentian female. I was so proud because I was the senior officer presenting their welcoming him into the RLC and giving their belt and their rank slide. And to see a female Vincentian got the best shot out of 100. I went on social media and said, this has to be celebrated. Yeah, because Vincentian don't go out shooting. We don't have clip pigeon. We don't go clip pigeon shooting. And for not only is she from a country where people are not accustomed to doing that life, but also it's a female competing with male, and she got the best shot in training. I was so proud of that young lady. Yeah, so there are some positive ones coming through. So let's not be all smeared with the bad ones. The bad ones are few. They're very, very few. However, when it acts up, it makes massive news, and that's because that the army has meant a lot to the young Vincentian, and somehow or the other we still have what I want to call the negative mentality. We love to hear bad news. So when something is wrong, spread it like wildfire and use it to plaster everybody. It's not always like that. That's the truth. I do come across a lot, but it's not always like that. There are some very, very, very young people who are. I just had a young lady online today. She's looking to go and do a degree. Yeah, she wants to take a gap year And she's asking me, how do I get a bus? So I do all the research for her. This is how you get into a gap year, but you're not going to get paid. However, she wants to do a degree. Yeah. And she's just been in the army, 3 years. So you do find some people who come across really, really positive and want to develop themselves. It's not all bad, just a very, very few who does that.
And that's generally the way it is, though. The few individuals who are leaning towards the negative make more noise, and unfortunately you do not hear about Captain Collins or Captain Patterson or those individuals who are really excelling. You would hear about the brawl, and that would be on radio in St. Vincent Grenadines for an entire morning. But also, I must commend that young lady as well. And in my mind, I'm thinking, Rufus, that it must have been a dual moment of pride, because here she is as well as a young Vincentian now coming in, and the senior big man who's welcoming them is also a Vincentian, and so that must have been a moment of pride for her, as the other countries must have felt a bit envious of that. And so these things are the things that we love to celebrate.
You picked something really good there. There was about, I think there was 9 Commonwealth in that group of 22 from that batch that I was actually dealing with, and they had a bet which country I was from. They already bet. So at the end of my introduction and having chat to them from a standpoint, and I come back down to speak to them level now, they're like, "Sir, which country are you from?" So I said, "I fell from the heavens and fell on the earth." And like, oh. I said, "Why is everybody so interested?" Then I found out they had a bet. So I said, "From St. Vincent." And the Vincentians, or 3 Vincentians in that group, started celebrating. So you're right. They do feel that sense of pride when they find out that they have Vincentians among the senior. Even today, I went on to one of the camps, it's one reg, and a young lady saw me, and she said, "May I ask which country you're from, sir?" And I said, "St. Vincent." And I said, "What?" She said, "I'm from Georgetown." And she was so proud. So you're right about that. We do instill pride in them, yeah. And go back to what I was saying earlier. It's not all the ones that are bad. The ones that are really interested in progressing, when they see people like myself and Erasto and Olivier and among them, they're so happy. They're really, really happy. They engage, they ask questions. And one of the platforms that I actually have, a social media platform, we're actually pushing that, myself and Erasto, we're pushing that thing to them to make them aware that there are people like us here willing and ready to support them with advice and whatever way we could actually help them to climb up on that ladder.
And that support is absolutely critical. Well, Rasto fell out. He seems to be having some problem with his internet. But in terms of our young people now, how do they excel? How do they get beyond the lower ranks to the rank of warrant officers and captains and so forth, so that they see you, they see Erasto, they see Olivier, they see Slater, and so on. They see individuals, but is it realistic for them now to not just only aspire but to achieve?
Yes, and it's there. I want to use Vincentian as an example. Not this University Caribbean guys, but Vincentian have more resilience, and that's an advantage you have, right? We don't realize resilience. Yeah, most of us would have come from a background of some sort of struggle. That struggle is transferable to army life and army skills. So right away we have what it takes the 4th step, and I'm going to allude back to my early days when I joined the army. They were teaching us how to iron. And I didn't want anybody to teach me how to iron because I know how to iron. So the corporal said to me, when he was showing me and I took my shirt and I started ironing, he said, "Oh, well, you need to teach the other guys." But I was surprised that there were British people who literally didn't know how to use, they didn't want to switch an iron on. I was surprised. So right away, I had that advantage. And a lot of young people have that advantage. Fitness is also something we take for granted. most of us are naturally fit, you know, because we walk distances where everybody in this country ride, which is natural fitness for us, strength to be able to carry stuff. We have all of that already. Now, one of the things that becomes one of the struggle is understanding the requirement. If you understand what the army requires of you, then you should have a problem, right? But that doesn't stop the people who understand the requirement. And again, I keep giving examples. 2 years ago, I got called to speak to a young guy from Sandy Bay who had some issues, didn't want to deploy and exercise because he wanted to spend some time with his friend's birthday. So I found it in the end. And when I speak to his warrant officer, the warrant officer said the reason why he said the soldier complained that he's been given a lot of exercise to do, as in go and do work in the field. He said the reason why I'm giving him so much work is because he has natural talent. He said, I've never taught him how to change a Land Rover engine. Didn't teach him anything, but he hadn't gone that far. He's a Remy. Didn't teach him any of that yet. And he was able to change the Land Rover engine on his own. He said no private craftsman are able to do that without proper training. He said that tells me that that soldier would make a tiffy in very, very short time, way ahead of his peers. And I relayed that information to that young man. I said, settle down, change your attitude. Yes, do as you're told. The very next year, he promoted to Lance Corporal. And I think he just came off the corporal board. Yeah, from that one little piece of advice, that sometimes is understanding what's required of you. If they understand that, they could propel. The opportunities are there. We naturally, people from the Caribbean naturally have that background that they don't realize. Just tap into that background, get settled, understand what's required of you, and move forward. All the opportunities that are afforded to the British counterpart is afforded to them. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, don't look at the negative. Look at what you want. What do I want from this? What in this for me? How could I make it up there? Yes, if you think, if you're not certain, not sure, ask me. Ask Erasto. Look for one officer. Ask one of us. Yeah, ask what you think I should do to propel her to go ahead of my peers. Yes, but the opportunities, I would say, that's there for the British is also afforded to the foreign and Commonwealth. You just have to take it and understand what's there for you.
Now, Patterson mentioned that there's a support group that you and him have formed, and you're growing. How can individuals already enlisted get in touch with you and be a part of that? And also, are you open to individuals who are interested in becoming a part of the armed forces, reaching out to you and getting information? You being a bit of an information depot where they can come, get the information that they want, get the guidance and so forth, so that you can help them to prepare for their next step.
That's the platform at the minute. At one stage, we had way over 300 people on it, and then it got compromised, and we had to jump ship and start over again. But again, over 200 people on the platform. It's open to any member in the group, could add anybody. And sometimes, like a couple of weeks ago, one guy, he's a phase 2 instructor, and that's one of the things I should have mentioned. So we even have Vincentians soldiers now who are actually part of the training team in phase 1 and 2. So I have one good friend of mine in phase 2, a phase 2 instructor, and he added 21 persons from the Caribbean to it just very recently. The biggest number in one batch. But yeah, so anybody in the group would actually add anybody. You don't have to be a group admin to add people. Anybody could add anybody into the group. I didn't put it on social media, as in Facebook, because I did the previous one and it blew up, as in too many people, too many numbers, too many questions. And no, it's not open to the Vincentian public who are not currently in the UK. And the group is not restricted to serving persons, that I should point out. It's for anybody from a Caribbean background, because the aim of that group is to attract professionals. So we could have doctors, lawyers, immigration officers, teachers, people of any background onto the group. So the idea is any junior person coming through or young person coming to the UK who might need advice on immigration. There'll be an immigration officer on that group. If you ask a question, she'll be able to answer you. If you want to go into trade, electrician, name the trade, there's somebody in that group who have done that trade. So you could ask a question and that person will be able to answer you. See, it's not restricted to military. It's not a military-based group. It's a Caribbean-based group aimed at developing our people socially, educationally, personally, financially. There's no joking in the group. So first thing first, no giggles and nonsense chat. If what you put in the group is not edifying, it's not going on the group. Simple as that. So I say to people, the common the group is not to share nonsense joke or share ugly pictures. It's about professionalism. So I think it's probably one of the only professional WhatsApp group you could find anywhere on WhatsApp. And information are shared out there, but it's for anybody from a Caribbean origin. Yeah, it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you're in the UK, you could join the group. Yes, it's not open to people from St. Vincent. On Facebook, I'm on Facebook, and I do get a lot of messages from Vincentian people who's trying to join up. I recently had one lady called me to say that her son is trying hard and he doesn't know what to do. And I spoke to her step by step how to get in. She said thank you. She contacted me about a week ago to say the son just passed it in phase 1.
Absolutely wonderful. Now we're running out of time, and I did warn Rasto that I say, Rasto, all might sound long enough, but trust me, once you get into the groove, this time would fly like nothing. And we have a few minutes left, and he's having real problems with his internet, so I can't even get him to wrap up. But I really appreciate your time, Rufus, and I really appreciate Rasto's time, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. And maybe we can do this again at another time, because there's so many other things that I think could come out and should have come out, but at least we built it, and there's a platform, and so at least now young people at home who are thinking of joining the army have a better understanding. Look, apply online. Don't come and jump on a plane and come to England, because you've outlined certain steps to them. So at least now they are ready. We need to talk about the relationships that need to be forged. The relationship with your sponsor, where you're going to be staying when you do come. You did mention the fact that you shouldn't come too early, and we should be delving into more of that, but we don't have the time, unfortunately. So this is where I thank you very much for being a part of the program. Rasto is off because he's getting kicking and cut out. But let me give you a minute to wrap up and give your final thoughts.
Well, I will say, Sion, I'm hoping that when the audience actually feedback, that the questions that are fed back will inspire a second program, because you're right. There's a lot of issues that wasn't actually touched there. And I would have hoped that some of them would have been, because I did mention earlier about a topic that I said I hope that you actually
I would have come back to,
and you'd actually lead into some other things.
Yes.
But in consideration of the time, it's not time to go into it. So I'm hoping that the feedback will actually push towards a different program, and then that will actually to shape the questions that you want to ask. But at the same time, it's to bring a variation of people on your next program, if there's a next program. A variation of people who are serving from the very recent, middle, and so on and so forth. So you have, and I know one.
I leave that to you. You and your husband could guide me and give me some suggestions, and maybe we can work together and coordinate that program.
Yes, so I think that would be a really nice one, because just bring a platform of different people across, so people could see the stages as it goes through. Yes, the service is great. I'm not going to say it has its shortfalls. They are painful bits, like everything in life, to be honest. It's not a bed of rose. Yes, but I want to say 90% of what you put in is what you're going to get back. Yes, so if you put the effort in to achieve great things, you'll achieve great things. If you are just there and expect everything to be handed to you, then you're going to wait for a long time. Yes. Okay. So I would encourage anybody, if the opportunity comes to you to join the service, do it. Take the opportunity. There are a lot of people from outside of St. Vincent who are trying on a daily basis to get through. If you get that chance, take that chance. Yeah. There's a lot of things to get from it.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much. And with that, let me thank you so much, Captain Rufus Collins from Diamond, and Captain Acting Major Erasto Patterson, my longest friend, one of my longest friends from Chateaubelair. Thank you both for joining the program this evening. Thank you very much for staying up late with Sion Marshall. And the information that you've given is rich, insightful, and I know many of our young people are happy for it. And I know the feedback is going to be fantastic. That would encourage a second program. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
All right. Thanks for having me. See you.
All right. Now, I thank my I thank my friends for being a part of that program, and it was really insightful and really enjoyable, and could have gone on and on for hours, but we already over time. So this is where I bring an end to the program. But before I end the program officially, I have to comment on some news I got recently. My good friend, someone who I met a few years ago and got to know as an individual. Most recently in 2022, I had the opportunity to travel with him as part of a delegation that accompanied the Prime Minister to Nicaragua through Venezuela. And I saw another side of the brother Dyke Cato. Recently on one of the programs, Nixon McLean mentioned to me that Dyke was ill, and so I decided to reach out to Dyke, and I did, only to hear the news 2 days ago that he had passed. I'm not going to say gone too soon, because I'm not God, but that's a good soul. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines has lost a good soul, has lost a patriot, has lost someone who's committed to our growth and development. And for that, I'm sad. I offer condolences to the friends and the family of Mr. Dyke Cato. And as we all say, may he rest in peace. And with that, we've come to the end of another edition of Up Late with Sion Marshall. Thank you so much for joining, and have yourself a fantastic evening.